Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. God is good all the time. So glad you guys made it into the show. And we're going to get started on the topic of today, which is basically just random tips and more on preparedness. So some of this is me going over a few things that I either forgot in previous topics, within this main topic of preparedness, or some other ideas I just wanted to throw out there. So the first one I'm going to start with was, this is silly. I'm so embarrassed. So you might remember when I was talking about off-grid lighting, for power outages, I was showing these little switch lights that put out just an incredible amount of light. So that's why I didn't like to point it straight at the camera. And I took one of I was showing it and the back was missing. And I'm like, oh, it only takes one AAA battery. Well, that's crazy. How can it put it out that much light? So I bought another set of these though, because I found some more areas I could really use these, not necessarily for power outages, but just in like closets and whatnot where they can be dark. And I realized that I had forgotten there's another place up here. So there's a place here and a place here for batteries. This one takes two, this one takes one. So they do take 3 AAA batteries. So I wasn't trying to lie to anyone about how many batteries they take. Because I was like, how is it this can take only 1 AAA battery and it puts out 10 times the amount of light as my little puck lights that take 3? Well, it's because I'm silly and forgot there was so 2 here, 1 here. Yeah. But the nice thing about these, another nice thing is, so they come with the little bolts that you can use to put in the wall, and then you can hook them. You just kind of hook it onto the bolts like that. Do I have this facing the right way? Okay. These are magnets. So if you just want to stick it onto something metal, and then it also comes with little Velcro pieces that have the, a peel and stick, so that you can even Velcro. So you put you have the one piece on the wall and the piece on here, which I did use that in one of the places I put these. I actually use the magnets because it's a metal door, but the magnets aren't super strong. So I decided I'd use a Velcro too. So I stuck it to this first on each one, then peeled these off, then stuck it on there so that I didn't have to worry about trying to line it up. But anyway, those are really, really nice. They're, I think, $10, you get 4 of these. And they can light up. This room right here is 1,100 square feet. It lights up this whole room. In the event of a power outage, I need to come in here and I keep it by the door. I just flip that on and it lights up the whole entire room. I'm not kidding. This is my issue with batteries, by the way. I want to bring this up since we're talking about that, is that I know there's got to be really, really good ones, but people ask me all the time about rechargeable batteries. We have a couple of different times invested in a couple of different brands of rechargeable batteries. And I find them to be far more of a waste of money than the ones you can get on Amazon that are like, you buy them in bulk, they're inexpensive, and you might have to, I don't have to replace them near as often as rechargeable ones. I know that for certain. And then the rechargeable ones, the more you charge them, their life gets shorter and shorter. So I don't know. I haven't looked more recently to see if there's any more, but it's like, I just don't know that I want to invest in any more of these really expensive batteries just to have them in a short period of time not work. A couple other things. So the medical prep one, I knew there would be things I'd forget and things I just simply wouldn't think of because they're things I don't find super, super necessary, but I still think are nice to have. So an oximeter. So a couple of years ago, I got us one of these because after I had the virus, it was seeming like I was constantly having this, even though I seemed to get over it for the most part quickly, it led into me having a relapse into Epstein-Barr virus that I had had several years prior, about 10 years prior. And I knew that's what it was. I could tell by the way I felt and the fatigue, but it felt like my chest would get real tight and heavy sometimes. And I wasn't sure if it was my lungs or if it was the muscles because they were so fatigued, but it would kind of make me feel out of breath. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get myself one of these things here. It's the thing you put on your finger, you turn it on, and it reads your pulse and your oxygen level. And I just wanted to make sure I was getting plenty of oxygen. So I did get that. My oxygen levels were great. And so I knew, okay, it's not my lungs. It's probably the fatigue throughout my body due to the Epstein-Barr virus. And but either way, it is nice to have one of these on hand in case you need it. It's simple, it's easy to use, and but it is digital, so keep that in mind. So I did get myself one of those. That particular one I cannot provide a link to because it is no longer available, but you can just look on Amazon. I think they're like $15, $20 somewhere around in there, and it's just one of those little extra things you can have. Another thing I don't always think to mention much of, though I did link to the video on this in the description box and to this particular radio. But it's just, you don't have to go buy this particular one, but I decided it would be good. I mean, we have a cheap little AM/FM radio, which is nice to have when all communications are down, which doesn't happen often, but it can if you have a complete power outage and then the communications go down. It's nice to know you have some kind of, you can be in touch with the outside world somehow. So having a radio on hand is great. And you know what's wonderful about this? I bought this like 10 years ago. And I bought it, well, not quite 10 years ago, 9 years ago, because I noticed on there when I was looking at getting the link, I bought this in 2015. The price has not changed. It's still available. And I'm like, it's still the same price it was when I bought it 9 years ago. That is amazing. But it has a solar panel that you can flip up to charge it with. It has a crank so you can charge it by hand if you absolutely have to, because you don't have any sun, because you live in Forks, Washington, and you never get sun. It's got places where you can charge various things. And of course, it is a radio. Let's see, it has an emergency light. How's that work? Or a flashlight. It probably needs to be charged. It doesn't look like the flashlight's very bright. It hasn't been used in a really long time. But it's got the weather band, and it's got your AM, FM, and yeah, so it's for the price, I definitely think it's worth it. It seems like there's something I'm missing. Oh, it also does take batteries as well, AA batteries. Having a radio like that where you can, because the little cheap one we have, we only get like one station with it. But this, we can get a lot more stations with that. Then also consider ham radios. Now we do have 4 of the Baofeng, I think they're pronounced ham radios, the handheld kind. We do not have a base station yet. We keep saying we're going to get one, but we can still use those in case of an emergency. And then we also have CB radios on at least a couple of our rigs. So having a few different ways that you can have some kind of communications, obviously with a radio like this, an emergency radio, you're not going to be able to communicate out, but at least you can hear what's going on out in the world. But also having ways that you can reach other people is going to be important, especially in the case of an emergency. Oh, another light thing I wanted to bring up, I've shown before, but some people might end up with some cute little garden lights like this one here. My sister-in-law got me. It's kind of flickery. It might need a battery replacement. And I love this thing. You can't tell in this light. It's not super bright anyway, but it's bright enough. And so instead of using it out in the garden where it's going to get ruined because I'll forget to bring it in before all the heavy rains come, I keep it inside on one of those plant hooks. So I have oil lanterns that we hang on plant hooks that I've shown before, but I also have a plant hook in the kitchen because where that one's located, I don't like having an oil lamp there, so I hang that one there. And that works really good. And it's pretty. So don't forget, you can use pretty garden lights like that inside. And it does have batteries because around here in the wintertime, using something that charges, the type of garden lights that charge with the sun are pretty pointless in the middle of winter because they just don't collect enough sun. In fact, by the time it finally gets fully dark, they're so dim. They don't last long enough to make it worth bringing inside. So they're great for summer, but not not for winter. Those are the things I brought in to show you, but there's a few other things that I wanted to remind people of. And well, I mentioned the t-shirt rags in last week's video when I was talking about on-the-go preparedness, but I just wanted to bring that up again because having all kinds of things like that, just taking old t-shirts and cutting the sleeves off and making just big chunks that you can use for whatever. They are so handy for so many things. We've used them for many, many years. They make good burp rags for babies. They make good paper towel replacements. Like I said, I've used them before to make slings when I had a really bad sprain one time it was either the one on my wrist or the one I got in Taekwondo class on my finger. I don't remember. The silly thing about the sprain on my finger is I did it to myself. When you guys hear this, you're gonna get a completely wrong image of what I did. I kicked my own finger, but you're gonna go, well, that sounds really dumb, and you're gonna think I stuck my finger out there and then kicked. No, it's not like that. It's you're to the side like this, and you're doing what's called a hook kick, and I let my hand drop, and so my heel came back, and I kicked my own finger and sprained it, and so I was walking around like this, and then I'd be teaching dance class, and my students would go, because I had a splint, what'd you do to your finger, Miss Heidi? Oh, I kicked it. And so they were doing that thing. They were like, did you do this? Like, you see them going, man, you're really dumb. It's like, no. That's not how I kicked my finger. And that's another thing too, is Patrick uses those t-shirt rags as shop rags for oil. And, some of the ugliest ones get put out in his shop. So if he uses them for oil, we can just toss them, if there's something that's just not even worth washing. And other types of things that just simply wouldn't wash out at all because it turns to concrete. So having those, yes, tourniquet, exactly. That was the other thing I was going to mention. So many uses for t-shirt rags, and they're virtually free. You got t-shirts that have bad stains or Patrick is always getting holes in his t-shirts all the time because he's always working with stuff that, and anyway, holes, stains, whatever. And so, you just cut them up and use them for whatever. They don't just get tossed. I have piles of those things around here because I use them for so many things. I got grandbabies. I keep a pile of them right next to me in the living room because somebody's always doing something messy, and I can just grab that. Somebody needs a nose wipe. I use them as hankies, so they're great. So, and in the event of preparedness, keeping them, we always have a bunch in our rigs, in our go bags, and just everywhere because they're just so handy for so many things. So I wanted to reiterate that one again. Now, when it comes to like the bigger items, I got to bring this up. I feel like, even though I've said it a lot, I feel like sometimes I don't say it enough. But when it comes to bigger ticket items, so whether it be electric dehydrators, canners, even a freeze dryer, though I don't know how easy it would be to find a freeze dryer at a garage sale, but I know you can find dehydrators, canners, just all kinds of things like camping supplies. We found a camp stove, like the standard Coleman 2-burner camp stove, for $1 at a garage sale. It worked perfectly. It still works perfectly. It just was kind of ugly because it was really old and has rust spots on it, but it's great. $1. I don't even know what they cost anymore to buy them new. I think they're at least $50 for one like that. So don't forget secondhand. I've seen, like I've said before, I bought 2 different dehydrators, one for $3, one for $5 at garage sales. And they were both like brand new. And then the 2 canners that we bought down the street, all American canners, we paid $10 a piece for. One of them I don't think had been used at all, and the other one looked like it may have been used once because it had that kind of dark color on the inside with up to the line. Those of you who have canners know what I'm talking about, especially if you have the All-American. Don't forget to look secondhand, and don't forget you have places like Facebook Market. That way, the nice thing about that is not only can you find local like garage and yard sales, but people are sometimes don't want to go through the trouble of having a big sale. They just want to sell an item, and you can usually get a much better price in places like that than you can on eBay. eBay is also okay for certain things, but it seems like anymore a lot of stuff on eBay is just so overly priced. But it doesn't mean don't look at eBay, doesn't mean don't look at Craigslist, but the point here is that there is a lot of things you can get secondhand. And especially anything that goes through a fad. Like, remember the bread machines? Like, everybody had to have a bread machine. And I'm like, why? It's not that hard to make bread by hand. And I love the hands-on. So everybody was buying bread machines. Well, for years and years after that, I swear every garage sale I went to, there was another bread machine. So, just keep in mind, if it's something you think you really want, wait a little bit. Someone's going to buy it, try it, not try it, realize they're never going to use it. It's just taking up space, and they're going to sell it for cheap in their garage sale or on Facebook Market. So don't forget that. Don't forget those places. Sometimes we get so excited to get something that it's hard to be patient to try, waiting for somebody to put something, to sell something like that. It can be hard to be patient. But, if you're lacking the funds, don't forget to look at these possibilities. And the other thing is to consider, and this would go with a couple other topics I recently did, but when it comes to putting up food, so whether it be your canning, dehydrating, freeze drying, whatever it is, whatever you're freezing, whatever your favorite way to put up food is, you need to consider, what are you going to do in the event of a long-term power outage and you have food to put up? Or you've got all this meat in your freezer, but you're relying on electricity for canning. So you're wanting to get that meat out of your freezer so you can get it canned up so you can have it preserved or dehydrated. How are you going to do that? So think of your different options. And I've been through this in the cooking and all that, but like, I've been doing canning ever since I started pressure canning. I've always done that outside on a propane stove. Remember the old turkey fryer thing I've mentioned so many times? I think we used it twice for frying turkeys, and it's like, well, this just didn't work. There's so much oil, and yeah. So, but the burner part, it's great because I like the size, because I have the tall canner, All American, and so it's a perfect size for me to set it down there like that and be able to deal with and do all my pressure canning and my water bath canning out there. Love that. And I remember one time we were having yet another power outage. What a surprise. And I needed a few more jars. This is back before I had the amount of jars I have now, which is outrageous, because we've been given so many jars from so many people and picked them at garage sales. And you can't not take them because you think, well, my daughter-in-law might be able to use them or something. So anyway, but I was down at the store buying some canning jars, and, you live in a small town. Everybody knows you. Hey, what are you up to? I said, I'm going to get some canning done today. And of course they're on a generator. It's like, how are you going to do canning today if you don't have any electricity? And I'm like, oh, because I'm doing it on propane. Easy. So, and then as far as dehydrating, if you can't afford a generator of any kind, solar power or whatnot, don't forget there are so many ways that you can dehydrate foods that don't require any electricity at all or any fancy equipment. I mentioned the leather britches is what they call it when they dry the green beans like this, crisscross, and they string them up and then just hang them up. If you get enough heat and air or sun, that can work. Around here, in the wintertime, I can use our wood stove for dehydrating, and I do. I've actually have videos, like, I know I have a short I did last year where I was dehydrating a bunch of ginger that I got from Azure Standard, fresh ginger, and I was cutting it up and dehydrated beautifully, just sitting right next to my wood stove on the racks that Patrick had built for me. And yes, you can use solar ovens for dehydrating too. Again, that wouldn't work as great here because we just don't typically get enough sun. But the problem is anything I could dry in the summertime, we get so much when we have sun where we could use something like that. We usually also have hand in hand all the humidity. And so things just do not dry very well. I've made lots of jerky. I'm planning on doing some again this year because I like to do it in the wintertime. So I can do it right on top of the wood stove, and it turns out so good. Marinate it for a day, set it up on my racks that Patrick made. And I do that on top of the wood stove so it will dry faster, and it kind of cooks it at the same time. I just put it on there raw and it cooks and dries it. And we love that. I actually just remastered this video, but it's the one where I did 2 different recipes. I think I was doing elk jerky, but it doesn't matter. It's just jerky. And I created on the spot 2 separate recipes. And one was using Bragg's liquid aminos, and the other one was using coconut aminos. One of the other points that I wanted to make sure that I brought up is, especially when it comes to talking to other people who are not into prepping and they think you're crazy, be it family, friends, or whatever, you're not going to convince them by telling them the world's going to end. So you need to put up 2 years, 5 years, 10 years worth of food. That's not going to work. They're just going to see you as crazy. You have to live it. You have to also show them the positive side. So remember that preparedness is insurance. And this is another point you can bring up. People pay insurance for their house. They pay insurance for their cars. They pay insurance for their health. They pay insurance for this. They pay insurance for that. And nobody thinks these people are crazy. Of course, some of the stuff you're required to do, especially if you owe money on your house, which thankfully we don't. We don't pay house insurance because it's a scam for us. It ended up being a scam. 30 years of paying into house insurance and having it not be there when you need it most, and then having to put on the new roof all by yourself, and having to pay for it yourself. We were done. So, but you have to have car insurance if you want to drive. There's all these situations where you have to have it. But some people don't mind paying that insurance. And you're paying month insurance all the time. Hundreds of dollars every month into an insurance, depending on what kind it is. And you may never use it. You never use it, and that money's gone. You don't get that money back. It's just gone. However, if you take that same amount of money, whether it be, $60 a month, $100 a month, $500 a month, whatever your insurance is, and you can put that into food storage or water storage or ways to heat and cook with, ways to stay warm, that's something that's going to be there when you need it. You can't just have it taken away from you. It doesn't expire like, okay, well, you stop paying your insurance. So now that you need it, you can't use it because you stopped paying for it. It's not going to be like that. So you got to remember, that's one positive way to look at being more prepared and to kind of remind people it's an insurance. It's an insurance policy that I can't be denied. I'm not going to deny myself that food back in my storage when I need it. Duh. So then the other thing, like for me, food storage was something I started doing because of the convenience, not so much about being prepared. It was the convenience. So and the money saving, because I could buy things in bulk and then put it up. And then I didn't have to run to the store 2, 3, 5 times a week. I had it. And then if I got a wild hair and said, gee, you know what? I haven't made my cowboy cookies in a long time. I think I'm going to make cowboy cookies today as a special treat for my husband or my kids or whoever. Well, I got all the stuff on hand. I just did that the other day. And then I can do it because I have everything I need to make my cowboy cookies. I've got chocolate chips. I've got oats. I've got coconut. I've got butter. I've got the flour, etc. I don't have to run to the store. It's convenient. So people need to see this. It's the positive things that I just spit all over the place. So sorry if I gave you a shower. It's the positive things that people need to see, and just living it and reminding people, I just love the fact that I don't have to run the store today and just go back to my pantry and get what I need. So to remember when you're trying to show even your husband, your spouse or whatever, because sometimes spouse, one person's getting on board with this and the other person thinks they're crazy. Well, sometimes just doing what you can and what they'll allow you to do and put up with, and then just showing them, look how nice this is. Oh, we just had company that dropped by and I only made dinner for the two of us. Well, you know what? I can go back to my pantry and I can pull out all this and make more food for everyone. So now everybody's fed. There's so many good, positive, practical things about it that it doesn't have to be about some big, scary event. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, live realistically and realize these things can happen, but with a lot of people, it's best to focus on the positive and remind them that also that, this used to just be a way of life for everyone. And we've become so conditioned to just, having somebody else do it for us, or, oh, I'll just run down to the store whenever I run out of this. Well, what if you can't make it to the store? What if you're out of gas? What if your car's broke down? Now, not only is your car broke down, you can't get to the store to get what it is you need. And then you got to ask somebody else to help you out. Not that that's a bad thing, but I don't like having to be dependent on other people unless I absolutely have no other choice. There's another one I kind of wrote in the side notes there, that when I was talking about off-grid cooking things, one thing that I did also forget to say in that video was we have the Winter Well. There's different brands out there, but I did put a link to Winter Well, and I just put the basic link where you can look through there and see their different ones. I did talk about the oven, the little stovetop oven, and that's actually made to go with the Winter Well tent camp stove. The nice thing about those, they're stainless steel, they're lightweight, they're small. You can use them in a tent, you can use them outside. And I also linked to the video that Patrick did on that. And it has, the one we have has a water tank on it, so you can heat water in the back. You can cook on the top, or you can use the little oven, or it comes with you can also, well, it doesn't come with it. You can also buy a separate stovepipe oven. And the nice thing about that, even though it's a lot smaller, has less space in it, it would heat up a lot better all the way around because it's attached to the stovepipe. So you got the heat coming through it. I'd kind of like to get one of those at some point, but there's all different kinds of brands of the tent/camp wood stoves. You could set it up somewhere just outside. I mean, like I said, they're made to be used in a tent. They make those tents now that have the stovepipe top on it, and you just put the pipe up through there. And then obviously, if that, you have to have something laying on the ground under it. If the tent has a floor to it, you want some kind of protective layer over that, because otherwise it can get too hot and melt it. But yeah, just some things to think about. So if you're curious about those, you can go check out the video link I put in the description box on that. Here's another one I did forget and another one I always forget to say is keeping super glue on hand, like in your first aid kits. The idea of using sutures in the event of somebody needing stitches. Super glue is also a great option. It's easy. You don't actually have to sew, and you can actually super glue a cut shut that way. But there's some things you also have to keep in mind when it comes to serious wounds. Some things shouldn't be stitched shut. So when my son, I say many years ago, it was quite a number of years ago, and he was out working, and him and his boss, it was hunting season, and they were coming back from their job, and they saw a buck. And so his boss is like, oh, we should go get that, and so they hopped out. Ryan shot the buck, but it didn't kill him. And so he had to go take care of, right. Well, unfortunately, when he got his knife out and the buck lurched, causing him to stick the knife he had in his hand through his, let me get my hand here, through his hand here, and it poked out the meaty part of his palm right here. The blessing about this is where it was. Had it been off he would have had to have surgery. He could have totally damaged his thumb or his forefinger here, but it went through here. But the thing is, the point in this is it went through his hand. So when you have a wound that's a through and through, you don't stitch it shut. So that's something you're going to need to know. It needs to heal from the inside out. So the important thing about that, and I went in there to the emergency and I watched everything they did. It's the cleansing of the wound in cases like that matter. Not some kind of shot to prevent tetanus. That's not going to help. It's not. At that point, it'd be too late anyway, if there was any chance. And if anyone was going to get tetanus from a wound, it would have been that kind. Tetanus isn't as easy to get as some people think. But it was the cleansing. It's the cleansing of the wound that prevents tetanus. So I watched what they did. And he obviously still has a pretty decent scar right here. But he healed up very quickly. I couldn't believe it. It was a bad wound. But knowing some of those simple things like that, or I shouldn't say simple, but it is important. Knowing that kind of stuff is important. And some wounds like that, you don't want to stitch shut. Got to heal from the inside out, or you could actually seal in infection. There's Mr. Rain. Camera's up there.
Hi.
And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.